but I spend every summer working at national parks and making a nice paycheck for a college kid, and of course doing something that's pretty valuable. So, oh yes, sir. Oh, someone asked about Culp Hill as well.
I wanted to ask you, do you know where the Talbot County wagon was from, the eastern or the western?
You know what? I don't.
Wow.
Okay.
I would love to figure that out.
Okay.
Maybe someone can do that.
Yeah, if you could give me some names, maybe I could
Find them on the census and pull that out. That's, yeah,
I
yeah.
went to schools on both ends. That's
Both
all I
ends.
know.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. I'll talk to you about that. That's great. Okay, so you're taking in, of course, Cemetery Hill, right off to your right there, and you can see the Hancock Monument, and then you can see the gatehouse as well. And then, of course, Stevens Knoll is just off to your left. Stevens Battery was there, and then we have the beginnings of Culp Hill off to our far left, and then beyond that, we have the Spangler Spring. So, looking back at your maps, you can follow Avery's brigade. You can even turn around and you can imagine them sweeping toward us. But if they had marched due east, what would have happened? They had gone off the chessboard, right? So what did they have to do? But they had to make that wheel. And of course, this was a wheel that was in the face of all this artillery. Only, as one Union soldier who witnessed this said, only veteran troops could have pulled off that kind of maneuver under enemy fire. And as they, of course, came closer and closer to us, that artillery to our front and to our left, they changed from shell to
double canister
as well. They expended all their canister, I believe Stevens Battery did, and they just started to put shell inside the barrel and then would just fire it, and of course it would explode, and it would be a very sort of crude form of canister. The artillery fire is, of course, what is overwhelming here against Avery's brigade, Isaac Avery himself, and of course I forgot the very thing I had photocopied for you. I'm frustrated by that. Avery was wounded right over there, hit by shell fragment, knocked from his horse, and as you probably have heard, and I had the document photocopied for you so you can see it. He wrote, Major, I think it's Dear Major, but it's definitely Major, tell my father I died with my face to the enemy. And again, I propose to you all, that is a powerful, moving, heroic moment in this battle. That is the narrative, that if anyone has heard anything about this attack on the North Carolina side on July the 2nd right here, it is a story of Isaac Avery. What is a story that, of course, doesn't emerge? It is a story of men like William Wagner. A little side note here, we have a student at Gettysburg College who is a direct descendant of Isaac Avery. He is also the direct descendant of a Union soldier who was killed on the first day of Gettysburg, and the student is African American. He's working at the park this year. He's one of the Pohanka fellows. Yeah, one of the Pohanka fellows. Yeah, nice little note. All right, you all, I want you to take this in, and what we thought from the bus, or at least I think we all concluded, an impregnable position, something that cannot be stormed. Now we know again that there were two breakthroughs. Hayes' Louisianans, we can't see that breakthrough from here. The woods is obscuring that. It's on the other side of the wood line, yes? Of course, those Louisianans scampered up the hill. They briefly captured a battery, hand-to-hand fighting. Also a breakthrough right in front of us, I believe, if you look at your map, the 6th North Carolina. Yeah, okay, good, I like that, yes. 6th North Carolina punched a hole in the line below. Probably 30 men or so scampered up the hill. You see where the Hancock Monument is. Make your way to the right. That's the equestrian monument, of course. Make your way to the right just a little bit. You can see one gun, possibly two guns, right, with a little lunette around it, a little earthwork. You all see that? Just very briefly, hell, I bet they weren't there more than 15 minutes before Carroll's brigade of the Union 2nd Corps with the 14th Indiana leading the way, coming through, just so happens I remember that, coming through, of course, the cemetery gates. They launch a counterattack, and that knocks back those 30 or so men from the 3rd North Carolina who gained the crest of Cemetery Hill. So two breakthroughs. Again, I think that's pretty astounding when you look behind you. Look at what they had to cover. Hayes' men didn't have to cover as much ground before they locked into the Federals. The problem, though, of course, are the troops themselves, or I should say part of the problem. The troops, the infantry at the base of the hill. Look at the stone wall. You can see a few monuments as well. There's where the infantry is. There are remnants from the 11th Corps. They have taken, of course, they came under some artillery fire. I'm still a little foggy on this, from Benner's Hill. It's been a long day for those men as well as for these Confederates as well. But they are at their limits. Remember we talked about courage doesn't come from, you know, an endless wellspring, does it? Right? So these guys, they've been tested, and when the Confederates surge forward, they break quickly. I'm not sure how much fire they actually came under. Probably not much. The artillerists on the crest referred to them as cowards, and as you know, it really was a rarity during the Civil War. I think, of course, the fact that they were Germans, that made it a little bit easier to make that claim. Nonetheless, they break. But take in the ground and tell me, folks, now does it look so impregnable as it did back at the bus? Where are some of the defects from the Union perspective?
Gully's right there.
Right there. There is the key. Look straight ahead. Look how suddenly this ridge line's done something funny on us, hasn't it? It's now running actually from kind of north to south, isn't it? Yeah, bizarre. And what's really telling, we won't unfortunately be able to do this, but if we were where the truck is right now, and look how the truck disappeared. Thank you, truck. How about that? There you have it. You get over there and you will really appreciate how the center of Avery's brigade, when they got to that ridge line, they towered almost on top of that Union line. And they are what? Right on top of them. So you are, I wouldn't say protected, but you got a nice little shield to your front here, don't you? Never would have guessed it. We're back there at the bus. Again, what? And again, of course, who would walk up through this? Not many people, would they? But if you do, here is the reward. Now, I'm puzzled by this thing off to my left here. Of course, this is quite a shock, isn't it? Because what it looked like from that bus was a level field, didn't it? Now we have this declivity. What about this declivity? Help hinder the Confederates as they made their assault? Help. Okay, so how? I would agree. I'd agree. I think you get into that low ground, that declivity, and I think that you have some protection. Now, of course, they're still facing Federal infantry, I might add, that didn't break and run, and you still have Stevens Battery. But, of course, men go to where they're shielded and they're protected.
How much infantry is there, though?
You know, in terms of raw numbers, I don't know. But I would say that we're at 50. I mean, I think that's. I can't imagine the Confederates have a numerical advantage.
Right. So therefore, they don't have artillery, but they still have to face a heck of a lot of.
No doubt about that.
Infantry.
You're exactly right. They are certainly facing Federal infantry to their front, and some guns. Federal artillery still was able to bear down on that Confederate infantry. But of course, the real killing ground is to your front here. And somewhere on this front, off to our left, Hal and I were talking a little bit about this. We went with Ed Barse, and as we know, Ed Barse is an oracle in all things. Ed had people go down into that low ground. I'm not so sure about that.
I said go around the witness tree.
Around the witness tree. But did he think that was the center of Avery's brigade?
Oh, well.
When I look at the map, I even thought Avery was wounded over here. Avery goes down really quickly, and enough people that I've talked to, and again, who in the hell really knows in the end? It happened over in that area. But the point being is that the 57th had to be down in this area. And somewhere along this route is where William Wagner was hit by a Union shell fragment. So why don't we quickly, I know we're on the burning sun here, but I think we can read this quickly. Sure, yeah.
What is backing up Avery to sustain the breach over here?
Let's say that one more time.
What's to back up Avery's breach?
There's nothing to back up Avery. Certainly there's Gordon's brigade that could have been brought to bear here. And there's some, I think, controversy about, again, how Gordon was used. But the real issue, the real failure, and this is, someone brought up the point that Allen stresses the lack of coordination amongst the Confederates. I, again, disagree strongly with that. There certainly were breakdowns. And the key breakdown, of course, again, is Robert Rhodes. Imagine, again, you look at your map, Rhodes and Hayes and Avery converging like a vice on Cemetery Hill. But I haven't seen any wartime account in which a Confederate, in the wake of the battle, even says, you know what, we blew it. This was the most vulnerable part of the line. It's Alexander, long after the fact, who's looking at the maps and notices what, in fact, came to haunt the Army of Northern Virginia in May of 1864, and that's what? What haunted Army of Northern Virginia at Spotsylvania?
Mule shoe.
The mule shoe, that's right. Right? A bulge, a salient. Is that not a salient?
Well,
There you have it. And remember what R.E. Lee said after May the 12th to one of his engineers? He said, no more sailings. There's a man that commands respect. Now, of course, if that had happened to my army, I would be pounding my fist, screaming and yelling. What does R.E. Lee have to say? No more sailings. And guess what? There were no more sailings after that. But there is a vulnerable, weak spot. But I think it became more apparent after the war, certainly in the case of E.P. Alexander, than it did at the time.
Lee was never over here on this side of the battle.
He did come over to visit. He didn't get this close, and we can't see Ewell's headquarters from here. But he did come over on the evening of the 1st and came over in the morning of the 2nd as well. How much of this he could take in, I'm not sure. I certainly could see Cemetery Hill. He sure as hell didn't see this crowd up close. No doubt about that. Okay, back to the Wagner letter. Good. And let's read the letter dated August 15th. Let's not read that one. Let's read July 18th. That's right. July 18th. Let's do it. 15 days after the battle.